You're listening to Get to Know World of Warships, a podcast created by Boggzy and Synpax.
Okay. Well, so sitting here with WhooptieDo. WhooptieDo, how are you?
Doing great, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing very, very nice. I'm streaming full
Thank
time
you
now,
for
and
the invite.
yeah, spending a lot of time creating for my YouTube channel, which obviously we're going to talk about yours as well. So I know you understand that it takes a lot of time, but it's fulfilling. I'm enjoying it. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah. So let's go over you a little bit. Find out why you're here. So you are a Twitch streamer and a YouTube content creator, and you've primarily done War Thunder in the past, and you've just transitioned over to World of Warships. And you've been playing about a month and a half. Is that right?
That's about right, yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm really excited because this is just my opinion. I could be wrong. But the fact that you're a creator means you have to put a lot of work into what you're doing. And if you've been doing that for War Thunder, I feel like you're going to hit the ground running in World of Warships with a higher degree of aptitude for being good at this game, basically, because I think you're going to look at certain things a certain way. So I really, really want to know basically how you're approaching this game, how you're finding this game. But before we do that, why don't you just give me like a real quick overview of, I suppose, how long you've been creating content, and whether it's War Thunder or wargaming games, and then we'll move on to World of Warships.
So yeah, no, definitely. When I first started doing YouTube, so I'm more or less a YouTube creator. Twitch was kind of something that I started doing because people wanted to, see me play War Thunder and stuff like that. But for me, so starting the YouTube, one day somebody asked me, it's like, hey, you're pretty good at jets. Why don't you, try and help people? Why don't you create tutorials or something like that? And I sat on it for a while, and I was like, you know what? Okay, one day I did it, and I had this really, really bad mic on my headset, and I was like, I'm going to put something together. So I put something together on this aircraft, and it honestly, looking back on it, it was a horrible video, but it had material in it, that was actually able to somewhat teach people, and it took off just a little bit. And I got through like the first few thousand subs. It took a little while, and then one day, one of my friends who I used to fly with all the time, he's another content creator. He gave me a shout out, and boom, it just took off like wildfire after that. And ever since then, I was like, okay, well, now I'm making a little bit of money. I can get a better mic, that kind of thing. And just to clarify, YouTube people, I mean, unless you're huge, you don't make a lot of money. It's enough to maybe pay for a microphone. So anyways, but yeah, that was the thing. So I was able to help people learn a game that has a very, very steep learning curve. War Thunder, as we said before we started this, it's very unforgiving.
Right.
So that was the rough part, and trying to not sound boring and get into it, but that was the thing. So there was a niche. There was not a lot of people that were teaching other folks how to fly jets, and so I tried. I did good. I thought we grew pretty quick. I tried to have a personality. But that was the niche. War Thunder did not have really anybody that was teaching people how to fly jets. And so my channel took off like wildfire because there was a niche and I filled it. Mm-hmm. And so here we are today. It's War Thunder was great for a while, and the gameplay hasn't really changed. It's starting to grow pretty stale. And so that's where I was. I was like, okay, well, it's maybe time to find another game before this one goes under.
I see. And so you're making a transition now to playing ships. I mean, I guess my first question is, I'm really interested to find out, when you started playing this about a month and a half ago, what were your first impressions? What did you like about it? What was frustrating? What was the learning curve like for you?
So for me, going right into this game, and I might get criticized a little bit for this, but there are premiums that you can buy. And I was told right off the bat from the folks that got me into this game that, hey, you want a tier 8 premium so you can make some money and so that you can grind through these ships. Low tiers, I really didn't enjoy it that much. Now looking back on it, I kind of enjoyed it a little bit, but there was a rather kind of a steep learning curve, especially when it comes to concealment and, spotting and stuff like that. That was not explained to me when I came into this game. There was no tutorial really teaching me about concealment and spotting. And so I'm running around, with a cruiser or a DD running around just open water gunboating like, hey, why am I dying?
Yeah.
So it definitely took a little bit, but thankfully I had guys that were very experienced in this game. to kind of, explain things to me, like hiding behind an island or something like that, or just using islands as a mask. And once I understood that, it kind of changed the game for me. And then from
So
there on, it was all about angles and whatnot. But it was a
yeah,
little bit, like I say, it was a bit of a steep learning curve initially, just because there really was no tutorials on how to do this.
yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't considered I've been teaching my girlfriend. Anybody who watches my stream will know Bree, my girlfriend, who comes on and I teach her how to play. And I've been trying to like that was the first indicator for me of like, oh, I don't actually know how to explain to someone how to play this game. Like, what
I'm
do you
in the
start
same
with
boat right now, man.
first? I haven't even attempted to talk to her about concealment because it's like, well,
Yep.
that to me
Yep.
is something much bigger. But I suppose if you start with that as your starting point, like, look, you could be seen this far away. If you keep your guns quiet, you will not get seen until something stealthier comes along. Because then, to me, it requires you've got to know what's stealthier than you, which requires a cursory understanding of the meta at that tier of what ships are the stealthiest, what aren't, what
And
does that mean?
and I was thinking about it the other day. It's the same thing. Like, say you walk out in your backyard and you blast a gun off, the whole neighborhood is going to hear it. They're going to know where you're at. It's very similar.
I live in LA, man. We
But
don't have backyards, but we do have guns. Oh,
all
that's
right.
fair. Well, so that's interesting. This is exactly why I wanted to ask you specifically about this because, again, coming from as a content creator, you're looking to not waste time when
Hmm.
as you're getting used to a new game. So concealment was the first thing that really caught your eye of like, oh, okay, here's the squeaky wheel right now. This is why I'm getting myself taken apart.
Yep.
But obviously you've progressed pretty quick because I obviously in the most recent Verizon sponsored tournament, which was essentially a fun version of clan battles. My clan TNG came up against your clan Bravo Zulu, a great clan, and you were there playing with them, and for all intents
Yeah,
and
that was.
purposes, I thought there's no possible way this guy's only been playing for a month and a half. So, can you speak a little bit about, what if it was concealment, or what was it that exactly got you sort of in the driver's seat and feeling comfortable the quickest?
Um, Definitely going back to it, definitely concealment, and the other thing was all about angling. And I'm still not a huge fan of, say, cruisers, because
Okay,
cruisers are inherently very squishy, especially when you're going nose to nose with a battleship. You're not going to
sure.
last very long. But it's hard to say. Like, there's just a lot of playing, and I've definitely played a lot. And thankfully, because of Rona, everybody's home, so I had all this time to do it. And I think I'm at something like 1,500 games in 2 months right now. It's pretty
Wow.
bad. But I mean, I'm stuck on quarantine right now, so girlfriend goes to work, and here I am.
Hey,
So
God bless,
it's
man. You and I are in the same boat in that regard. Bree goes out and works, and I play video games. Oh, Jesus. Well,
yep,
the world's
that's
getting
that's
turned
the
upside
life.
down, brother. Well, so someone said buy a tier 8 premium. Did you?
Oh yeah, no,
What
I
was it?
definitely. The first one I got, and it's kind of funny. I ended up picking up the Massachusetts.
Oh, good. Okay.
And it's funny because the guys that were giving me suggestions, they were like, "No, get the Alabama. Don't get the Massachusetts
Oh my
because the
God,
Alabama
no.
guns are better." And then I was like, "Okay, well, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna buy a couple. We're gonna mix it up. I need one for a DD. I need one for for the experience in all the classes.
Yeah,
And yes, I
yeah.
even bought a CV,
God bless you. Which one was it?
the Graph, and it's the least played
It
ship in my
it
lineup now.
used to be too good. Now it's terrible. Yeah,
The
unfortunately.
planes are extremely, extremely squishy.
Yeah.
But But no, but so I got the Massachusetts, and when I first started playing, I'm like, man, I can't hit the broadside of a barn with these guns. They were so all over the place, and I didn't really understand that, it's a brawler. You have to get up close and personal. And then I was in this whole meanwhile, I was like, well, I'm gonna get the Alabama. So I got the Alabama. I'm like, oh my God, these guns are really good, and like 29-kilometer range or something stupid like that. I don't remember. Maybe it's 26. I was like, this is really cool. The guns are so much better, but I don't know, it was like apples to oranges, because I saw the
Yep.
conversation in a chat yesterday. It's like, oh, the Alabama's better than the Massachusetts. Well, it's completely two different ships. Yeah, they look the same, they have the same armor, but the guns kind of change the gameplay just a little bit. But
Yeah, you're
once I
absolutely right.
understood that the Massachusetts was a brawler, and then I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. So I just got up and I recorded this game. I'm not even sure if I'm going to put it up because it's really not anything to brag about, but it was a moment for me
Mhm.
where I was against, I had one guy that was competent in a mains. He was rolling right there with me. We took out the DD, so that flank was pretty much ours. And then a Bismarck, it was actually two Bismarcks in North Carolina came at me. I blapped him and I didn't even use a heal. I was like, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
when I understood a little bit more about the Massachusetts and getting up close and personal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Massachusetts is one of what I would call one of the holdouts of the secondary ships because generally speaking, secondary builds are only something that are plausible in randoms or maybe in ranked or something like that. But in terms of like competitive, like clan battles or King of the Sea, the bigger tournaments,
Oh yeah, for sure.
secondaries are just a joke. They're a meme. They were used to good effect on the Ohio a little bit in this meta, but it just ultimately it's not optimized. So, but the
No,
Massachusetts is
and
just delightful because even though the guns are sort of shotgunny, it has these very accurate long range secondaries that fire real fast and light fires. It's one
exactly.
of the few ships that oddly enough is secondary viable, or maybe even like it's better to play it as a secondary boat, just because then you can get into close range,
Any
stay nose in,
Yeah,
and brawl.
anything within 10, 11 kilometers an hour or 10,
Yeah,
10, 11 kilometers is fair game. But, that's the other thing too is like I've noticed right off the bat, everybody's all excited about these secondary builds, but the secondaries themselves don't really do any damage. It's all about setting those fires.
yeah, especially the American ones. The American secondaries, I think they pin by themselves 21 millimeters. Which, again, as you start to progress through the game, and you were talking about the gun calibers and the armor layouts and what you can angle with, which is why cruisers feel unforgiving,
Hmm.
and they will
Oh
for
yeah.
a while. To
Oh
be
yeah.
honest with you, like, the secondaries, the pen amounts will start to make more and more sense to you as well. Like,
Oh yeah.
21 millimeters means it will basically only pen superstructure on anything that's not a DD. It'll pen DDs pretty consistently no matter where you hit them, which is why American secondaries specifically, the 127s, are very dangerous against DDs of all kinds. But against cruisers and battleships, they're really only going to pen the superstructure. But they're also going to light fires because they're more accurate than German secondaries, which have higher pen values but are less accurate. So it's sort of an odd trade-off. German secondaries can do real damage, but
Hmm.
light fewer fires and hit fewer times, whereas American secondaries do less damage, but light more fires. I
And then there was
love
that one
secondaries
time
either way. Tiny guns are hysterical to me, so I'm on
on the
board.
note of secondaries. On the note of secondaries, I just find it funny because there was one time that I think it was the first time I saw Shikishima in the game. And
Mhm.
I didn't really know exactly that was a secondary build. And I just started, at like 10 kilometers kind of, I think I was in my Holland or something stupid like that.
Yeah,
And I started just open watering at him because I'd set him on, or I flooded him. And then he damn conned. I'm like, oh, I'm going to stack the fire now. So I started open watering him real quick and then running. And I realized my mistake very quickly
yeah,
because holy cow, those secondaries are something
yeah.
else.
And some of the, you'll also figure out which ships are secondary viable because the ships that are secondary viable have arbitrarily increased base ranges, which means they can get their secondaries with
Mhm.
full build out to about 11.3, 11.6, depending on what the nation is. But most just
Yep.
don't, so they're not viable. But anyway, I'm so on your discussion about like cruisers. I think you're right because cruisers have this odd. Everyone assumes, oh, well, a destroyer, everything pens it, so angling is not really a question. The question is then staying dark versus open firing.
For sure.
Battleships, they've got armor. They can and will bounce things. So the question is, what can they bounce? Which is most things, and what angle does it have to be at? Cruisers you really do have to have a better cursory understanding of armor pen values and overmatch qualities to understand cruisers.
Hmm.
And that's when the difference between like Soviet cruisers, American cruisers, Japanese cruisers, those nuances start to get a little more clear. For
For sure.
example,
That makes complete sense because that's probably my biggest issue right now is I don't understand, what each ship has for guns and whether I can. I have to ask the guys that are with me. Most of them generally know and be like, "Hey, you can bow on that guy." I'm like, "Sweet, I'm gonna
yeah,
do it."
and that's where having a good clan is really helpful. So if you're with Bravo
Oh,
Zulu,
for
for
sure.
example, and you're diving with them or playing with them, you can literally just go, hey, can I bow
Yep.
tank that guy? And they'll go, oh no, 457s will overmatch
Hmm.
your bow. And you go, Great. What do I do? They'll probably tell you, don't engage that guy. You know,
Get behind an island and spam him.
right?
Yeah, because that was
exactly.
one of the things. Like everybody's like, "Oh, the Des Moines so great," and it is. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and smash on it, but it is squishy,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's still where I'm still learning it. But all right, hold on one sec. Let's pause this.
Yeah. I hear a cat.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop him for a sec.
You gonna stop the cat? We gonna put tape on his mouth?
Just gonna close the door.
Oh, this is staying in.
I mean, I could kick him.
Don't kick the cat.
I'm not.
Don't kick the cat. Hey, I live in Hollywood, and I have like fights that you would think were over the fate of the free world going on in the street outside my house sometimes. So your cat's fine.
Yeah, no, I just closed the door. I kicked him out and closed the door. This cat's so annoying. All right, anyways, continue.
Well, that's quite all right. So I suppose then I'd like to know. You said that concealment is difficult. Armor overmatch, and pen values on things like cruisers is difficult. Which again, those are things that take a lot of just understanding of what the highest and lowest values are at the tier. So that certainly makes sense. Can I ask you what's something you like about World of Warships more, say, than War Thunder?
Honestly, it's quite a bit more laid back. I will say that. Like I can sit and I can plan. Once I have just a little bit of intelligence data. Once I have a picture of what's going on in the map, I can plan my route ahead of time. Whereas in War Thunder, you're on the fly making decisions. You have to have that reaction, or you're dead.
Right.
And
very unforgiving.
In War Thunder, and I can't vouch. Well, I mean, it's probably the same in tanks. I'm not a tank person when it comes to War Thunder. I'm strictly air, and it's these reactions that I built up over time that keep me alive. Or it's in Warships though. You have more time to think.
That's why they call it the thinking man's action game.
Exactly,
because you have to think.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the thing. Is a lot more strategy based than reaction based.
Yes, I would. As someone who has played quite a bit of War Thunder tanks and War Thunder planes, I never got into naval battles, but I've played a bunch of those. I will say that War Thunder tanks is essentially a game of who shoots first, and and that is completely dependent on your reaction time, on how observant you are of tiny pixels moving at 2 kilometers. One
of War Thunder's biggest issues that they're having right now, and this is part of what's driving me away, is they come out with the vehicle. Some of there's vehicles that have been in this game since day one.
Yeah,
and they've been power crept out of existence, and that is what's happening. Every patch in War Thunder is they power creep everything out because they don't try and balance it.
I mean,
it's driving me away.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's actually a big thing that a lot of the community talks about here for World of Warships as well, which is, new things come out that are either too good or not good enough, and then other things get left behind. Like the Zao used to be an incredible flamethrower, and now it's sort of like, why would you take a Zao when you could take you could take a Hindenburg, or you could take... There's just a whole bunch of things that do the same thing, only just slightly different, and in a way that, I don't know, it's an odd thing. And I still don't have a very good bead on what the balancing mechanism or what the balancing time frame is for World of Warships and wargaming. When I even got the chance to ask Sub Octavian, who... he's the guy essentially in charge of the game. I asked him, I said, what's the feedback turnaround time? What's the mechanism for the community letting you know when something is not working? And we always joke, of course, that it's the spreadsheet, that they've got numbers. Synpax desperately my former co-host Synpax, who started my clan and started this podcast and brought me onto it, he wanted to see that data. He wants to know what it says to them. What does it mean if something is spreadsheet says it's fine, comrade, and of course, we never got that information. But
yeah, there was a lot of similar stories coming out of War Thunder, spreadsheet data and stuff like that. And it's like, where did you get this data from? Because it makes absolutely no sense.
You gotta assume that it's a balance of the folks who play under 1,000 games and then end the game, right? They play 1,000, they're like, well, I'm a millennial or I'm a Zoomer, so my attention span has been exhausted. I'm gonna move on to what was that? Fruit Ninja? I don't know. I'm a boomer. I'm a
Yeah,
35-year-old
no, I have
boomer.
no idea.
So
Hey, I'm 36. No, I'm 35 still for a couple more days.
COVID
So
caused you to forget your age. Oh, your birthday's
yeah,
coming up.
no,
Okay.
I stopped counting. I stopped counting after 21. Don't worry.
I hear you there. Well,
But but
so like this is obviously World of Warships, and I would say even wargaming games in general are arcade games. If they were to be compared to War Thunder in any way, I'd say they are compared the most to arcade mode in Warplanes, which I played arcade mode in Warplanes, or sorry, War Thunder a long time ago, and now that I look back on it, I'm like, how did I ever play that? It's ridiculous. But it is also I want to call it like a soft entry into it.
it is. It is for sure.
Yeah, and so this is an arcade game. It's more forgiving. It's less
HP based instead of
right.
That's the big difference between War Thunder and this game for sure. Is this is an HP based game, whereas War Thunder is if you hit the right spot, you're dead.
Yeah, what would you call that? If it's what would if Warships is
I mean,
HP
they're
based?
striving for realism, I guess. I
Yeah,
don't know. That's,
realistic mode for
that's a
sure
tough
is as highly realistic I think as you can reasonably get. You either have to kill the crew, detonate the tank, or hull break to the point where the mechanics stop working. Whereas this, you can have a gross occur first alive on 11 HP. Like what does that mean? What does that translate to?
Yeah, what does that mean? It's like
You can
everything's broken but the gun.
yeah, you can extrapolate that in theory to whatever you want to call it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe that if you want to existentially extrapolate it, you could say, well, as soon as you reach 0 HP, then something inside
Life
detonates
ended.
and the ship dies. Yeah, like
Yeah.
you've thrown enough lead into this thing that eventually the magazine blows and it's dead. I don't know. It's arbitrary to me, really, but well,
It gives you a fighting chance right till the end, though, and that's all right. And that's the other thing too is like losing a little bit of HP actually makes you better with the adrenaline rush.
yes,
So
tactical AR boost is why you took
Yep.
that broadside, right?
for sure.
Well, so before we move on to talking more specifically about your experience as a content creator in War Thunder and then what you think it's going to be like in Warships, I want to ask you to do a segment, and I'm not going to take a break here. I'll just put actually, at this point, they've already heard it, so I'm an idiot. I'll put the ad at the beginning before I bring you on.
all right.
I make satirical ads for the podcast that are just they're itching my my acting and my voiceover funny bone. So I'm going to ask you to sink a ship, which I talked to you about beforehand. So hopefully you've got one in mind. But let's assume that for one day, the game files of World of Warships are open to you, and you're allowed to take it War Thunder style and literally hull break one ship in the game and it'll never come back. If I were to ask you to do that, what would that ship be?
Okay, so yeah, like I said, this is a tough one for me, but the first thing that comes to mind, because obviously I can't get rid of all the CVs, right?
No, you can't. What is with all you greedy people wanting to come on and eliminate an entire class?
That tournament we were talking about though, where the Verizon tournament or whatever, and there was no dude, that was
There was
awesome.
no CV. Yeah, it was a really
That
nice
was
time.
great.
My clan had an
That was so
enormously good
enjoyable.
time doing it. Yeah.
But honestly, I think the biggest annoyance for me right now has got to be the Thunder.
Okay. Why is
That
that?
thing, I'm just tired of getting set on fire.
Right.
Be sitting across the map. Oh, you're on fire. Oh, look, the fire. Nope, here comes another fire. Thank you.
Yeah, it's an HE
I think
spammer
we do
for
massive
sure, and
amounts
those
of damage.
the shells are 457s. They're 18-inch shells, so they can the HE pen on them, and they're British. And I don't know if you've learned this yet, but British and German HE shells have they have an increased armor penetration threshold. So, again, this is a hard thing to remember because it requires a lot. But overmatch is a mechanic where essentially, if a shell is 1/6, if the armor value that you're hitting is, I believe, 1/6 the value of the caliber of the gun, it automatically it's got to be like 1/10 or 12th or something. I don't know. 457s, for example, will overmatch 30 mil armor like it doesn't exist, and it'll go right through and detonate inside, regardless of the angle of penetration. So I guess if 457s can do that, then it would be, math is hard, 1/15th. Yeah, it's 1/15 the armor value, I believe. Comment in the description below if I'm wrong. Tell me that I'm an idiot. That's fine.
Please tell us, because I genuinely need to know this.
Smash
No,
that
I just
like
know
button.
I stay away from big guns.
Yeah.
No, but thankfully the Thunder is a little squishy when you shoot it from a broadside. In fact, last night I chunked 3 Citadels for 42K on the broadside of a Thunder.
Yeah.
I was like, thank you.
Big Citadel
Maybe
above the
pretty good.
water line. It's not terribly well armored, so if you can get that broadside, if you can hit that Citadel at a decent angle, you will punish it. And that's the trade-off for the big guns that fire fast and light fires.
Yeah, honestly, if I had more time to think about it, I'm sure there's other boats that maybe probably more fit in that category, but I will definitely say the Thunder is very annoying. When I see that thing, especially when I get up tiered into Massachusetts, I'm like, I'm done.
Oh yeah.
I either have to charge him or there's nothing's gonna happen.
Yeah.
I just can't do it.
Brother, what you'll find out is that those big ships, especially battleships that have relatively thin armor covering the whole ship, they may have good citadel belts of armor down below, but they're covered in the French battleships are this way. They're pretty well armored, but they're covered in layers of thin armor, which makes no sense to me. So they eat HE pens like crazy. And so things like Smolensks and Thunderers and what have you, things that like to spam lots of HE, they just love those ships. And I was playing the Vermont, the new upcoming Tier 10 American Tech Tree battleship. I was playing it on stream the other day, and the first 3 matches I get in have 3 Thunderers on the other side, and I went, "Oh, well, this is great. I'm going to be on fire the entire game." You know,
Yep.
so I don't blame you one bit. As time goes on, you'll start to hate specific ships more, just based on you're like, oh, I think I know how to deal with a Thunderer a little bit better. But it actually proved its mettle in clan battles this last season because it was maneuverable enough to mitigate some airplane damage. It could overmatch, or not overmatch, but its HE guns were enough to burn down Petropavlovsks, which became the cancer in this last season. And its heel was decent enough that it could have some longevity, but it was squishy, no question about it. You're absolutely right. So, well, let's get a little more specific about content creation, if you don't mind, because
Sure.
yeah. So I looked at your channel for your YouTube channel. I've only watched a handful of War Thunder content creators over time because I just never put that much time into it. And so I would watch Fly daily. I'm sure you know Fly.
Oh yeah, everyone watches Fly.
Everybody watches Fly.
He just hit 1 million. He just hit.
Did he really?
1 million.
Congratulations to him. That's amazing. I mean, he puts an enormous amount of effort into the editing and the work, and has such a great charisma to him that, you know, God bless him. I'm glad he's doing well. But you know, a few people like Fly in there. So when I went through yours, I noticed exactly that. I was like, oh, he's very specifically jets, and I thought that's great because, quite frankly, I stopped playing right before missiles entered the game. And when I came back to play here,
Got out at a good time, my friend.
Yeah, when I came back to get into it just a little bit, like I was looking around, I was like, well, do I have anything unlocked that comes with missiles already? And I was like, yeah, the F9, F8 Cougar has missiles. I loved the Cougar, even though it wasn't a great plane. Before
It wasn't a very
missiles.
forgiving plane, but it is a good plane.
Yeah, okay, forgiveness, it certainly was not a forgiving plane, right? And I probably didn't have the skill level for jets at the time to really know what to do, so I struggled. But then I pop in and I'm like, oh, it's got missiles. This is awesome. And, you know, honestly, it didn't take a whole lot of time to figure out how to use the missiles properly. It was pretty simple, outside of key bindings and whatnot. So give me an overview a little bit about, you already talked about jets were your thing, and that's where you were trying to find your niche and to draw some attention to yourself. So if you could speak a little bit to, number one, how does the game of War Thunder sort of fit for content creation versus Warships? I mean, we all know the games generally tend to last about the same amount of time. So how easy was it for you to figure out how to make, or what to make content of, and what are your feelings and instincts as you get more into World of Warships about content creation?
All right. It's trying to figure out how to put my thoughts into words here, but you know, with
sorry, that was a lot. I'm a verbose man.
yeah, I'm trying to compose it here. Okay, so Ask it again. Just
That's
if we
fine.
have to edit this out, that's fine.
No, that's
But
fine. I mean, it's my fault for asking because I
it was a
can't.
lot, and I had it in my head, and then it just brain farted out. I was like, okay, that's not good.
Brevity is something I'm working on practicing. So well, so okay, let's do it this way. As you play, you said you played about 1,500 battles now. As you play, what sort of things occur to you as, hey, this would be good for content creation? This would be good for a video series. This would be good to highlight. How about that?
For sure. So comparing it, and it's going back to how you asked it the first time. But so War Thunder, I could sit there and I watch people, and unfortunately die. I'd watch my team crumble around me. I was like, okay, what can we do to try and fix that? And it was really kind of getting back to the basics. And so I know moving into Warships that I'm not going to be an expert anytime soon on this. And so I am very hesitant to jump into actually making YouTube videos because I don't have a lot of credibility yet. So I'm doing the streaming and trying to bring some of my community over, and maybe we'll gain some new community in the meanwhile. But for Warships, I'm noticing right off the bat that there are key things that people definitely do not have. And so if I can key in on those things, like the people that are sailing broadside in a cruiser, the people that are open water gunboating, these are the people that don't understand the game very well yet. And I've noticed this too, is I made the mistake of installing that matchmaking monitor or something like that. I was just genuinely curious for the numbers. And I noticed there are a lot of people with under 1,000 games that are playing right now. There is a lot of new people. And I've heard this from others too, that there's a huge influx of new people right now. And I don't know what this game was like before carriers, but right now I know that the carry gameplay has totally changed, or carries have changed the game.
Yes.
So, and the thing that I noticed too is when I have a match that doesn't have a carrier, that destroyer isn't out there spotting for his team. And so these little key things that I'm kind of picking up on, and I figured that those will probably be the topics that, when I start making videos on Warships, those will be my key. Don't sail broadside.
Sure, the basic
don't be out in the open.
Mistakes that you're finding yourself learning to overcome.
The basics, right. And that's the other thing too, is like I've watched some of the other folks that are making videos on Warships, and they are definitely smart people, but YouTube is not very forgiving if you don't have some kind of let's just say you're not boring. I don't know if that's the good word. But when you're just sitting there talking like, hey, this is a ship. Yep, you don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. But if there's no inflection in your voice, people don't watch. And so YouTube, not Warships, but YouTube is not very forgiving when it comes to people that, are somewhat monotonous. You might be the smartest person in the game. You might actually have all that knowledge. But if you don't have a personality that someone can listen to, then YouTube is going to punish you.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I'm hoping that I can kind of bring some of that in and bring in a little bit of knowledge and maybe have some success. That's my goal.
I think that's the right attitude. It's strange. When I started doing this podcast, for example, back in April with Synpax, the leader of my clan, I sort of jumped into this, which is content creation. And I would actually say that this podcast is more social than it is gameplay, just because this podcast started as Get to Know a World of Warships clan. Synpax created it with the explicit stated purpose of interviewing clans and wanting to get to know about their culture and essentially their social aspect of it. And so to that end, we had a Brony clan on, right? ERN, the Equestrian Royal Navy, is a clan centered around bronies, guys who like My Little Ponies. And we thought, of course, that was our reaction too, which is, okay. But then they come on and we get to ask them, and you realize, it's sort of like there's a certain irony to their own enjoyment of the content, but it's sort of born out of this, I almost liken it more to like adult people who like SpongeBob SquarePants. Apparently that we found out there was a remake of My Little Ponies that was made in this decade, and it was done so with a certain self-reflexive irony to the writing. And so that's sort of what they're picking up on and enjoying. It sort of reminds me of like weebs, of people who like anime. And oftentimes they'll like little childish looking things, but there's a certain sort of like, yeah, I like it. I don't give a shit. It's fine.
Yeah.
So you get that, and then you get to talk to, the '07 community, arguably the most competitive, the largest, most competitive clan, or the largest of the most competitive clans, who consistently put up good numbers, and you get to talk to some of the absolute best players in the game. You also get to learn that their community is very, I would say, aggressively competitive, even with each other. Really knowledgeable, usually very friendly and kind and whatnot when you talk to them one-on-one. But if you like dip your toes into their Discord, for example, you don't know the games that they play, you're going to think, oh, these guys are just giant pieces of shit. When really they're just playing games with each other. And if you stick your nose into it, it's sort of like a group of friends that all have inside jokes and you're not a part of it. So they're going to tease you, and then you sort of get to know it a little better and you go, oh, I understand what's a game and what's a joke and what's not. And that's anything really. Like that's any highly honed or optimized culture.
That's the other thing I'm growing into on this one. It's like, the guys that invited me in their Discord, they've got two channels that actually get a kick out of it, just screenshots. One of them is alarming stats pages.
Oh yeah.
And the other one is Venom mains.
Venom mains?
Venom mains.
Yeah.
And it's these people, obviously that's all they play is Venom.
That's awesome.
It's funny, but the alarming stats, that's honestly kind of, I get it, and I've noticed like right off the bat, I gravitate towards having a div just because I want at least two people or one or two people on my team on the same page as me working together. Yeah. And there isn't a lot of teamwork right now. And it's I struggle to watch my teams kind of crumble around me. I'm like, and it's the same thing that I struggle with in War Thunder. It's like, it's not that hard to stay alive, but the people just go in and, they don't understand concealment, or they don't understand that they're going to get punished. They don't understand the broadsides from across the map that you don't see.
Right. They don't understand carriers.
Yeah. They don't understand carrier spotting. And, that's it. I really enjoy playing battleships. I really do, because it's kind of fun. But at the same time, if I'm doing solo, I'm more likely to gravitate towards a destroyer, because a destroyer has such a huge effect on the match.
Sure. It's absolutely right.
And there's a flip side to that too. It's like when I see somebody else on the enemy team in a destroyer and they're spotted, they're radared, and nobody's shooting at them. Guys.
Right. Hello? Anybody? Am I speaking into a void here? Yeah. Well,
so it really helps, especially in situations like with the destroyers, to have somebody, roll with you in a cruiser, or roll with you in a destroyer, so that, you can go and you can find those guys. You can find the key targets that you wouldn't find otherwise, and you can get rid of them real quick, and you can affect the match.
Right.
And that is where I'm struggling right now. If I play solo, or even with a couple guys, it's like, if your team pancakes, there's not much you can do.
That's a tough lesson to learn, but
I know there is some people that can do that, and this is my thing with games, and this is why I play War Thunder for so long. Like, when I play a game, I don't generally play other games. And I will play it passionately because I want to learn the ins and outs of it. I will not put it down until I've learned the game. And so that's why right now I think I'm so into this game, is because I'm still trying to learn it. And I know I'm so far behind. So.
Well, it sounds like you're catching up very quickly. The general consensus is that your first 1,000 battles are essentially a write-off. That's when you will have red stats no matter who you are, because you're trying to, it's sort of like that old adage of like, if you haven't, I don't know, when you try to learn a bike, you're going to skin your knees a little bit as a kid, because you're going to fall as you try to figure out equilibrium, right? Like how do I literally keep my body up on two wheels? Like, how does that work?
And that's part of learning in general, is like, you have to fail to learn. And you see that in a lot of games, people will not make those risks. So.
No, they won't. And that's extraordinarily frustrating. The people that sit in the back in their destroyer launching torpedoes that aren't ever going to reach the target, because you're like, can I just help you skip this part of your learning curve? Can I tell you to go here and do the same thing you're doing, please? And they go, play your own game, dickhead. And you're like, all right, well, I'm writing this game off on my taxes.
And that's the other thing. It's never their fault. It's everybody else's fault.
That's video
That
games
is
in general,
one very,
though,
very,
isn't it?
very, very common thing that I found in this game.
Yes.
It's always everybody else's
Do you
fault.
feel like it's more so than War Thunder?
I lose more karma because I'm the last one left with 150,000 damage. Like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
but I mean that's this
frustrating.
game. You just have to be numb to it. You know?
I would say that this game for sure is much more of a team-based cooperation required game than War Thunder. Like War Thunder planes or even tanks, you can have an effect on the battle far outside what you can in warships. You know, if your team's getting rolled in War Thunder ground forces, for example, you get your tank into a good spot where you've caught 3 or 4 of them, you can kill 3 or 4 enemies quickly and turn a flank by yourself. Because it's essentially it's one shot, one kill for the most part. Whereas like this, it requires so much more effort on a team strategic sense than War Thunder, and that's really frustrating when your team ain't up to the challenge. So
and that was another thing too. You're talking about, you know, being able to take out a flank. So obviously I did nothing but jets in War Thunder. It was at least until missiles came along, you know, even in planes, but you could be the last one left. And if you were in a good plane, you could handle multiple enemies at once. It's not uncommon. I've won, you know, that 7v1 battle, that 6v1 battle.
Right.
I've come out with some amazing games when I'm the last one left. Now, it took me a lot of patience because I'm like, okay, I'm getting tired of this. This game needs to end soon. But that was what really, I think, kept me in War Thunder. And then when they started bringing out all the missiles, and of course, the aim of my channel was to teach people. And well, I can't teach you how to dodge 10 missiles that all are very hard to dodge and start. Like, there is no way. I cannot teach that. And that's what, like, it just kind of drove me away. And at the same time, like, I can't. No amount of skill in that game, at least in top tier, is going to keep you alive anymore.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the fundamental difference between the two games, really, is that Warships for sure is much more of a team-based game. And, you know, teaching teamwork is, well, God only knows how difficult that is, because I wouldn't even try myself. What you're really doing is you're teaching map awareness, and then you're teaching people how to take the fundamental aspects of the game, like overmatching, angling, map positioning, concealment, and then put that into context of, well, what does that mean on this flank? If this flank dies, what do you do? Do you rush over there and throw your ship away against 4 in order to try and save it? Mm-hmm. Do you sort of consolidate and go, okay, well, here's a linchpin on the map where I can go, I can hold this myself for quite a while, you know, and then it's another skill to say, how do you get potatoes and good players alike in a game to hear you, listen to you, and attempt to do what you say? You know, if you say, hey, destroyer, back off this cap, it's 1v3, don't die for it. Yeah. You know, how do you do that in a way that doesn't trigger a, you know, get wrecked scrub?
Yeah, just having that one destroyer is a huge advantage. The second you lose your destroyer, I mean,
it's a much more social game than War Thunder, and part of that is, I think one of the hardest parts about it is, how do you get, in randoms at least, how do you communicate properly to mitigate the effects of, you know, one for all mentality, or all for one mentality, whatever that is, in a random game. How do you do that? How do you convince someone that this is what they want to do without triggering that sort of reflexive rejection and, you know, get wrecked?
Well, I will say too, and that's one thing I noticed, and somebody made the joke about it, that this game is made up almost entirely of retired Navy chiefs. And I laughed at it at first, and then I started looking at the clan tags and the names and the BMCs and stuff. I'm like, holy cow, it's actually true. So I've noticed in this game is majority of the community is a lot older.
Yes.
Whereas in War Thunder, I was considered the old man. I come here and I'm kind of the kid here now.
It's boomers and zoomers, man.
Know, yep. Boomers and zoomers. Okay, boomer. But but yeah, it's interesting to say the least that, you know, everybody that's been teaching me in this game is either my age or older.
Yeah.
And, even going into BZ, I didn't realize going in. I knew nothing about BZ. I knew one of the guys in it, and then he put me into it. And they're like, "Hey, we're doing clan battles. You'd like to join?" I was like, "Oh yeah, sure. I would love some steel and be carried."
Right.
They really they did. But no, it was fun. But they're awesome guys. They're older, and that was the thing, is like it's so calm.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, they know the plays, like they had it all planned out when we go into these maps. And I was like, this is actually really nice. It's a complete 180 from the community I had in War Thunder.
Oh yeah, the War Thunder community is just. I almost struggle to call it a community, just because to me it's sort of like, well,
it's a collective hatred for the company.
That's about right. Which, I mean, it won't take you long to find out there's a lot of collective hatred for wargaming.
Yeah.
I actually got the privilege of addressing that frustration and that anger and that vitriol from the community towards the game company to the head of the game company himself on those podcasts. And we sort of talked about it. I thought it was plug, go back and listen to that episode, everybody. That was really something to sort of put a face on that and go, how do you guys take feedback best?
That is honestly, that's something that I don't think War Thunder really has. This upper echelon of like the content managers, the community whatever you want to call them. There is a lot more support in this community. Now, I'm not gonna dish out on the guys that are running War Thunder, because we got some good people over there on the content manager side.
Sure.
But from the developer point of view, there is zero communication. I have one guy that I can communicate with, and he's like, he listens to me and he will try and forward it on, but beyond him, it's lost in the woods. Like there's just nothing gets through. Like this, the biggest problem is, and he knows about it, and he forwarded them all on, but in War Thunder, there is an issue right now, and it has a lot to do with probably the servers or the connection of the clients. But either way, there is a problem with invisible missiles in War Thunder.
Oh.
Not even appearing. You just blow up out of the sky.
Love it.
You can't see anything. If you can't see it, you can't dodge it, and all of a sudden you go boom and you're done.
Right.
And so this problem has been going on since missiles came into the game. It has now been over 2 years since the missiles have come into this game, and nothing has been fixed at all.
Yikes.
And so that is the kind of stuff that's ruining gameplay for people beyond, just the whole missile meta in the first place. But I'll find my way. I'm not completely leaving War Thunder. I can still go down to props and have fun down there.
Yeah,
but,
props.
Jets were really Jets were really fun, and props are really fun too. Don't get me wrong. It's just a lot slower.
Just because I don't get to talk about War Thunder very often, and I realize that I'm a community contributor for Wargaming now, and that we're talking about Warships, but I mean, there really was something. I thought one of the most enjoyable tier or BR in realistic planes in War Thunder was like, I would say 3.0 to 4.3 or so. Just
for sure,
lots and lots of fun.
Tons of planes at the 3.7 battle rating. A lot of premiums, a lot of good planes.
Yeah.
A lot of people would argue that the premiums were better. There's only one or two planes I could ever think of in that game that the premiums were actually better. In a lot of cases, the premiums are actually worse.
I think they sort of should be. I mean, ultimately, it doesn't really matter if the premium is better. I mean, I suppose that opens it up to pay-to-win accusations.
Exactly, and that was a big thing. There's only a couple planes that I think that were almost a little bit unbalanced in the sense. And then they got nerfed, and then they came back. One of them was like the XP50, I think.
Oh yeah, I recall the XP50.
That plane, you could never catch it. It just had so much power. It was like a homesick angel.
It was a UFO.
And then they nerfed it.
Yeah.
And then they nerfed it. They got rid of its wartime emergency power.
Oh, did they?
And then it was pretty much worthless.
Yeah.
See, it was still maneuverable, but it did not have that kind of power. So it changed the gameplay a little bit. Yeah, and then here about 3 months ago, they did something. They didn't give it back its wartime emergency power, but all of a sudden it had more power than it had pre-nerf. And so now it's back to this homestick angel where you can just fly circles around the team.
Yeah, that's so funny.
That is one of the rare occasions.
The ones I recalled from, it's probably been 5 years since I played War Thunder consistently. I remember the ones that I liked the most premiums were the planes that they weren't blatantly overpowered, but they were just generally very, very strong. They excelled at a lot of things. So the ones that I recalled being really exceptionally good planes were the ME-109 G2, the Romanian one. It's been out forever, but when that was released, like, it was just so good at that tier, because even if you put gun pods on it, you've got 320 mil cannons at 3.7 or 4.3 or whatever it was at the time, I forget, and it's just got that ME-109 power to weight ratio still, so it's so flexible and useful.
Still a very good aircraft today.
Yeah, and then the other was the Focke-Wulf 190 D13. The Dora 13, which I think got nerfed or maybe power crept, but back then it was the D12, D9, and D13, and those were the German super praps. And
yeah, the D9 was highly preferred. And so I was never like a big Dora pilot. I didn't really enjoy them that much. They're good planes though. Now the D9 was preferred because it was a lower battle rating,
right?
And so you had a little bit easier matchmaker.
Yeah. I mean, those
that, planes are still good to this day.
It was that whole, at that boom and zoom meta where it's like, this has really strong horsepower, good climb rate. It dives well. Even in a dive, it rolls like a monster. It has terrible elevator control, but it also has 320 mil cannons in the nose. It just does everything you want it to do at that level great, except turn. So solution, don't turn.
That was another thing too, is like the 190 Antons in that game. They're a little bit lower, they're a little bit slower, but they have some really old flight models still in the game that they haven't touched. And the Anton is one of those weird aircraft like the A4 and the A1. I think it's the A4 mostly, but those aircraft, they hit 600, 700 kilometers an hour. And you can pop the flaps on them, which in most aircraft, I just rip them off. Well, no, in this aircraft, it makes it pull 16 Gs, which is one of the highest, one of the highest G pulls in one of the most durable sets of wings. So you're out turning things at these speeds, and it's like, whoa.
Which begs the question: shouldn't that kill someone? Shouldn't 16 Gs kill you?
Your brain's going out your butthole at that point.
Yeah. Just as a little aside here before we wrap up, I recall every once in a while, if you ever want to watch something hysterical, get on YouTube and look up G-force tests for Air Force pilots, because you'll see these poor people who go into these G-force machines, and they'll go up to 6 and then to 7, and some of the crazy ones go all the way up to 12, and you'll just watch their faces melt. And then you get to really enjoy that moment when they regain consciousness, and you can see, it's almost like you can see consciousness come back into their eyes for a moment, and they're just like,
Yep.
They forget what they were just doing 3 seconds ago. It's
I got some of that experience too, because we did low pressure chamber. So I am military. I don't talk about what I do, but I am active duty. But we had to do low pressure chamber, and I got a kick out of it because low pressure chamber, they take you like 25,000 feet, I think it was. I don't remember exactly. But they give you children's toys. Like, we had one of these balls that had like the cutouts of the shapes, and you put the shapes through the ball. Right? And so this dude's sitting right next to me, and he's got the ball. And, they tell you your first symptom or whatever. Maybe it's like, I forget if it's 1 or 2 symptoms, but you're supposed to put on your oxygen. Well, he got to a point where he didn't see his symptoms, and he was starting to get delirious. So if you know what happens when you get hypoxic, basically you go full dumb.
Yeah.
And so he's sitting there with his ball in his hand, and he's got the shapes, and he's just sitting there. He looks like kind of like a monkey, slapping his hands together. He's like, too fast. He's just mashing it. He can't get in. He's like, too fast. Can't catch me, y'all.
That's great.
And he just went completely brain dumb. And then all of a sudden they put the mask on him. He comes back too. He's like, he kind of blinks. He's like, what just happened?
Yeah, right.
He was completely clueless, completely oblivious to what happens.
That's great. Well, let's do this. Let's move to plugs, because we're nearing an hour, and I don't want to bore you or any of the audience with an hour long. But here, let's do this. Let's get you to plug anything you'd like to plug, and I'll put it down in the description below with links. And then you should absolutely join me and play some Warships on stream. I don't know if you said you're streaming. Do you stream yourself?
So I've been streaming on Twitch. That is where most of my Warships have been going, because I don't want to go into, producing content yet. So I do Twitch. Sure. I am streaming. I try to make every Monday night, and I aim for Wednesday night as well.
Okay.
Right now with quarantine, I'm probably going to stream pretty hard for the next week or two. That's twitch.tv/WhooptieDo. And of course, my main bread and butter is my YouTube channel, which right now is primarily based on War Thunder. I haven't made that switch yet, but that is, again, YouTube. WhooptieDo on YouTube.
Right.
So, yeah, so it's Twitch and YouTube for me.
Great.
And like I say, it's making the merge, making it, because that's the thing too, is you can't transition that easily. My community is all based on War Thunder, and
Right.
very few of them have anything to do with Warships. So it's almost like starting over again.
Almost, yeah. I'm sure you can bring some who just like you for you and your
Oh
personality.
yeah, no,
and
I
all that.
definitely have a few of those guys, and I truly appreciate them.
Yeah. Well, so with that being said, you should absolutely come and div up with me while I'm streaming sometime, or I could do that on your
For sure,
stream, and we can continue having fun conversations like this in that capacity. So I'll put those.
I think we got into this one a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. This is a lot of fun. Synpax always said to me, he said, "It's our podcast. We can do whatever the hell we want with it." So I'm taking liberties, but we'll throw those links down in the description below. Thank you very much for giving your time, and I'm looking forward to playing some games with you in the future.
Yeah, buddy.
Cool, brother.
Thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely. And for everybody listening, thank you all. I really appreciate it. The fact that you guys actually listen is the whole reason I keep doing it. So